Everyone, to this session in Ready to Teach Week. The session is, it's not all about SECaTs developing an base of teaching expertise. But before we get fully underway, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners on the lands on which we're all meeting here today, and we repay our respects to their ancestors and their descendants who continue cultural and spiritual connections to country. Today's session, I hope everyone will learn lots. I'll talk first about just what SECaTs are, for anyone who doesn't quite know what they are, and then kind of talk about there's a certain kind of trap that SECaTs we might fall into and how to avoid that. And then I'll pass over to the amazing Associate Professor Christy Noble, who I'll call the feedback expert, in which she'll share her experience of feedback in the classroom. And then at the end, we'll send it over to Dr. Karen Shepherd for other ways we can evidence your teaching expertise. So we'll begin with SECaTs. For those who don't know, and for those who do know, this might just be a nice refresher. SECaTs are the survey that we give to students at the end of each semester. They're just simple questions that we use. So like for questions about the course, questions about the teachers, questions about the tutors. Um, they're quite generic. The first eight are Leica 1 to 5 kind of questions, and then 9 to 10 are open text. Um, but we'll just keep moving on. If this loads, the purpose of SECaTs, I jumped ahead. Um, so they're a legislative requirement to provide the opportunity for students to provide their experience on their course and teaching. But we use them so that the way that UQ uses them is so that we can improve teaching quality. So the feedback is given to academics, and then they can use that feedback as one way to improve their teaching. We use it for appraisal, so line managers can use it as one metric to see how you're going, and then institutional accountability. So just making sure that students are having a good time, and then our teaching is uh, quality across the board. Um, the life cycle of SECaTs, students evaluate the course, the data comes through my team, student surveys and evaluations, and we collect it and then we distribute it to course coordinators, lecturers, and tutors through reports. And then it gets used for all the reasons I mentioned before. And then we try and close the loop with either dashboards or other ways to make sure that the students know that we're listening to them. This might be the last time I use this slide, but last year we improved the system. We changed system platforms to a different one, and the change resulted in a doubling of response rates. So we got up to 40% last year. Hopefully, we'll continue that trend this year, but just as a final FYI that we've changed it. Um, so in this cycle, it's obviously SECaTs are a metric, and I want to talk briefly about there's a trap in focusing too much on metrics. And I've been reading a book recently by C.T. Nguyen, in which he talks about in this quote here, metrics are understandable, interconnected, and perfectly transparent. And in this clarity is a certain kind of trap. We become beholden to what everyone can understand. So how I view this quote, especially in SECaT terms, is that as we try and evaluate everyone on the same page, we have to strip away a lot of the nuance and the subtle of each teacher's particular experience. And in this stripping away, um, there is a certain kind of trap. And that is that if the metric becomes the mission, uh, some might deem that, no longer we're focusing on, quality teaching or the student experience, and rather we're just chasing after a number. And there's a Zen saying, it's when you see a finger pointing to the moon, look at the moon, not the finger. I really like that. In terms of let's focus on, uh, your values and the quality of teaching and the student experience rather than just some metric, and treating the SECaTs as one metric for evidencing your teaching rather than the complete and whole story. And to summarize it, it's if we do get trapped in this kind of metric following thing, you'd call it value capture. And so value capture gets us to take on an institution's eye view of ourselves to evaluate ourselves and our activities in institutional terms. Institutional metrics are tuned not to an individual's rich and particular experience of the world, but to the needs of information processing at a mass scale. So I guess in summary, I just think the warning is remember that at the end of the day, you know yourself better than anyone else, and your experience and the way you evaluate and reflect on your teaching experience comes from a vast variety of, personal values, different evidences, and relying on one metric can lead us to as CT Nguyen puts it, potentially worrisome in that we're taking on institutional values, not our own personal values. Um, so one way we can kind of think about this in a more positive, active way is through the feedback cycle, in which we're determining our learning goals and developing success criteria. Now, I've chosen UQ's values, but again, if you don't have to get them off the shelf, you can uh, figure them out for yourself. So you identify your values, then you can evaluate and interpret evidence. So I misclicked. One of the ways in which we can evidence that is through the SECaTs and other data, but getting it from a whole range is ideal. And then we can take responsive action and improve upon our teaching. And to engage the students is one way we can, or like to close the loop is one way to keep engaging our students um, as they want to see the changes in the responses that they give. Um, and my final slide before I hand it over to Christy is feedback is a continuous collaborative cycle, not a single event. So SECaTs, yes, sit maybe once, twice within a year, but there's many other ways we can collect feedback. And these are just the formal ones. Um, Obviously, there is many ongoing personal ones that you can do to evidence your teaching practice, which Karen will talk about later. But I think this is a perfect point to hand over to Christy to talk about her experience in this.
Super. Thanks so much, Alex, and thanks so much, Karen. So, hi everyone. I'm Christy Noble. I'm coming to you from the medical school. And what I'm going to talk to you today about is um, how we think about CCAT. So, Alex has said, oh, sorry, do you want questions from Alex? I just saw your chat there, Karen. Before I start to dive in, do you want a moment? Oh, I can't hear you.
Sorry. No, please go ahead. I was just letting people have an opportunity if they wanted it.
That's all right. I thought well, Alex was still kind of with us in our minds. So sorry. So what I want to do really is to help you make that shift from the number to the what am I going to do with this information. So what I'll do is I'll start sharing my screen, and while I'm doing that, one of the things so the other thing I'd like to add is I'm a feedback researcher, so a bit of a feedback geek. So thank you, Alex, for the opportunity to talk more about feedback. And I can see there's a few folk here from medicine as well. So apologies if you've heard some of this before, but repetition is fabulous, as we all know, in terms of learning. One of the things I really want to highlight in this is that feedback can look different in different disciplines and circumstances. So while I'm about showing my slides, just pop in which school or discipline you're working in, just to give me a sense of the depth and spread of the audience online, please. And I will get going. So thanks, Alex. Cool. Okay. Lots of diversity. Amazing. Okay, super. So I'll just do a slide check. Great. So I can see people from lots of different areas. So I will try to, where I can, to draw on examples from your areas. Otherwise, I think hold this as a way of thinking about your SECaTs, and then I think whatever happens with the information that I share with you, it will also be something that you can contextualize to your setting. So one of the key things, as you may have gathered, that I want to share with you today is even when you get your SECaT information, one of the things I want to make clear is that there's different ways you can move with this. And a way that I found particularly helpful thinking about and working with information from SECaTs is thinking about it as my own form of gauging with feedback. So thinking about what feedback is and now how I can make the most of this opportunity, work with some feedback information I've received. So these are not my SECaTs, but I'm just going to share with you one. So anyone want to maybe do an emoji or something? I've been teaching medical students. So do an emoji of how you might feel if this was your SECaT. Oh, is Karen crying or laughing? I'm not sure, but so this is a moment that many of us might recognize. You open up the report and all of a sudden you're starting to interpret what those numbers mean. Yeah. So we've got some sad faces. And we start here because it's familiar. But for this session, I don't want you to stay here. Instead, I want you to think about if you step back and then start to build the foundations to make sense of that data, then there's a much more productive and healthier way to engage with this information that we're receiving about our teaching. I kind of thought this is how I would have felt, crying my eyes out and a bit in the corner. But I think that's how some of us might feel. And it's a really normal human emotional response to seeing ratings, particularly when we don't have context. As soon as we take context out and we start to look at 3 out of 5, already we're starting to apply judgments to that. And I'm sure you've all felt this way or in a similar way. And again, part of this is our initial emotional reaction. And with feedback, like any form of feedback, you often have an emotional response. And so what I want to offer is a different lens. And already you can see just from my little examples that you start, SECaTs can land as a judgment, a score about us as people and us as educators. But it's the interpretation that comes from holding a really narrow definition of how we think about feedback. So something that is done to us rather than something that we engage with. So Alex mentioned about feedback as a process. So in this session, I'm going to broaden our definition. It might be one that you're familiar with, but it might be one you're more familiar with working with students. Now I'm challenging you to work with this definition for your own work. So once we work with that broader definition of feedback, SECaTs then stop functioning as a performance indicator and start becoming that one piece of information that you could work with. It's not the whole story. It's not the end of the story, not the final word. It's just one perspective. Just to hammer home the emotional response, how would you feel if you got this SECaT? I haven't seen any emoji responses or anything. Maybe people are shy about. Yeah, Karen's going to celebrate. I probably would have. Oh, skeptical. Okay. I would have jumped straight to the champagne. Sometimes it can spark celebration. And maybe, yeah, maybe you can start to think, oh, what's going on here? And I think that's even a really interesting perspective. We all come up numbers with different perspectives. So, regardless of our responses, and thank you, Adam, for sharing that, I think our emotions range and it's telling us that feedback is not neutral. Already, we're starting to have an emotional response or having impressions about a single digit or several digits. So, the question for this session really becomes, how do we engage with SECaTs in a way that is grounded, productive, and aligned with the way feedback actually works? So the fun part for me is that I'm going to step into feedback theory and research, and I'll give you a practical example of the types of the way we've approached this in medicine. Okay, so I've already hinted that I want us to have a different lens for thinking about feedback, to really think, yes, there's an emotional part to this, but it's just one piece of feedback information. A SECAT is not the whole picture. It's a snapshot, one perspective amongst many. And like any source of information, it's incomplete on its own. But when you bring the SECATs into a broader feedback process, so a process which might also include peer review, your own reflection, looking at other forms of data, whether it be learning analytics, having dialogues with students about their experiences, then the information can become really informative about what to do with that SECAT. So the key question shifts from what does this say about me to what is this telling me that I can work with? So again, just to reiterate, it's a going away from this is the verdict to this is information that I can use. So I'm going to dive now into how that some of the myths and some ideas around feedback. But before I want to do this, I wonder if anyone's felt like this in terms of feedback. You're getting information that's being shot out at you. This tends to be the definition that when people are talking about feedback, they often talk about it as a feedback sandwich. Maybe some shows of hands or so on if this is. Certainly before I started researching in feedback, this was how I viewed feedback. Yep. So I saw one show of hand. Whoops, sorry, having a moment. Okay. And this is why feedback can feel a bit gnarly when you're getting, if it's coming from a SECAT, if it's being information shot out at you. So I want you to present to you another model. And this slide really marks a key pivot for how I thought about feedback and how both my teaching practice and also my research has gone in a different direction. So you can see right from the name of this, feedback Mark II, means that there's a different way for us to think about feedback. Feedback isn't something that you passively receive, it's something you do. And I'm going to show a definition to you and give you a moment to read that. And then I'll walk you through the key points to illustrate and then connect that to see feedback. SECAT, sorry. Maybe a little thumbs up when people finish reading. Super. I've got 1, 2. Okay, we'll move on. So really what I'm getting you to think about is the feedback is about interpreting information. So firstly, it's a process. It's a process in which, in this case, you're the learners obtaining information about your teaching work in order to appreciate the similarities and differences between teaching practices, so appropriate standards for any given work, so excellent teaching practices, the qualities of your work, which you may need more information, and that's where the gathering comes in. The SECATs are hinting at that in order to generate improved work. So this is really about comparing, judging, and then working towards improving work. So regardless of the number on your SECAT, this is about how can we improve our work. So I've gone through that. It's about obtaining information, working out those similarities and differences between the appropriate standards, in our case, teaching or academic scholarship, and generating improved work. So again, just to reinforce, this is about telling us that feedback isn't just about receiving information or receiving SECaTs. It's simply that one source of information. So for those who like a figure, this is a symbol, pictorial representation. So really I would challenge you to think, okay, so I've worked out how or get information about standards of teaching work. And this can come from many sources. It can come from peers. It can come from the literature. You're teaching, you're making judgments about your work. You may seek then further specific feedback about that in addition to the SECaT. Engage others in judging your work and then planning for improved work. Okay, so I think one of the key things I want to highlight now is that to work productively with SECaTs, we really need to develop our own feedback literacy. And this is something I've certainly had to do in terms of, okay, if I'm going to research on feedback, I really need to be able to elicit information, but then manage my emotions, make judgments, and take action. So what feedback, maybe I'll just have a little show of hands. Anyone heard of the term feedback literacy? Some thumbs up or down. Nope. Thanks. Okay. So what feedback literacy means is that we're not natural, or the argument is, so this term came out in 2018, and the argument is that we're not all feedback naturals. We don't naturally gain feedback information, take it on board, move forward in a productive way. We have wobbles and there's skills that we can develop to enhance the way in which we engage with feedback. So this research and literature has really been applied at us as academics developing students' feedback literacy. So in the first box there, that they can appreciate the feedback. So they may appreciate all of the different forms of information they're gathering from your course, for example, that they're developing the skills in making judgments about the information that they're receiving and judging their own work, and they're managing their emotions. So the synthesis of those three means that they can take action and improve. In simpler terms, it just means that you have the know-how in terms of maximizing the benefits of the feedback process. So as I've hinted at already, I think this is the way for us to work productively with SECaTs. Appreciate the different forms of feedback information we're getting. SECaT scores 1. There's also all of those qualitative comments, managing our emotional responses, and I can tell from the session these responses will be diverse. And then we're starting to make judgments about our work. And this is the bigger body of work. We're interrogating our teaching, starting to reflect and think around what's going on here, where can I get more information? And then making changes or taking action in order to improve outcomes, particularly related to teaching. And I think as you go engage further and further in this process, it becomes a really meaningful and sustainable way to enhance your teaching. So let's come back to the example I shared with you. And I just do the example I shared with you where you've opened your SECaT, and I get us to hone in on question 6. Unsurprisingly, this question 6 relates to feedback. So you can see from the SECaT here, there's certainly indicated that there's opportunities to enhance the feedback. So the question 6 relates to I received helpful automated group or personal feedback on how I was going in the course. So if we think about that, for me, this would be a particular aspect of a SECaT, which you could hone in and think, well, what are some strategies I can use to enhance feedback in my course? So for those who are on medicine and online, I think, Rob, you might know about this a lot. One of the things that we did is that often students, medical students certainly complain that they don't get enough feedback. And this gave us an opportunity when we were designing a new program to think about how we could shape opportunities for medical students to get feedback as they develop their clinical skills in simulated environments. So there were two things that I thought about was the type of assessment tasks that we could use, and then also how we could develop students' feedback literacy, really picking up on that piece around how they might appreciate feedback. So what we did was we asked students they had multiple observed clinical assessments over several weeks. This was an assessment for learning tasks that they were observed performing a task, and then they would engage in feedback. So instead of trying to fix the SECAT score, what I focused on was really strengthening the feedback process itself. So I set the score aside and thought, what do we know about best practices in terms of feedback? So we built that sequence of low stakes, feedback rich encounters with explicit feedback conversations embedded. Excuse me. I'll just get some water. Oh, sorry. Still got the croak. But anyway, let's get back to it. Okay, so little croaky. So what we saw was one of the most powerful changes I think that we've seen in terms of doing. Wait one sec. Sorry. Actually, you can write questions if you have so far. I just need another guzzle of water. And
Anybody got any other questions? Feel free to, while we'll give Christy a moment to reconvene. I don't know, did anybody see Lady Gaga sneeze on stage?
no, but that's making me feel better.
She literally lost the plot and had to start the song again.
Well, I won't start us all over again. You'll be happy to know.
Yeah.
But what I will get, so thank you. I've recovered now. So what we did was we changed the assessment form, and I'll show you what we did. So we asked the students before they perform the task to request feedback from the tutor. So they would consider what they want. They knew what tasks they were performing, and we asked them to consider what feedback would you like. And in the green, we have an example of what one of the students wrote. So really, this was orientating the students to a core part of feedback Mark 2, priming them to seek and use feedback rather than wait for it passively. So already we're getting actively involved in the feedback process. And for tutors, this gave them clarity about what students actually needed. So really, we're starting to transform how students were engaging with feedback. Now, I wonder if this is going to work. I have a little clip, which, Alex, you can do me the thumbs up if it's working or not, if you can hear it.
No, we can't hear it.
Oops, I will stop and then I will share again and optimize it for the sound. Okay. It's just 2 minutes, so it won't be too long. But this is students preparing for the session, and I've got the wrong screen. Having a shocker Lady Gaga moment. There we go. Our
life support session next week, the PSW. We're going to work on filling out the DOPS today, if that's right, Hassan.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's tick that off. Yeah, great. So I think the first thing we have to do is sort of summarise the steps. So I guess for basic life support, we're thinking about doctors A, B, C, D, I suppose, especially the A, B, C, D today.
Absolutely, yeah.
Danger, response.
And I think while you're writing that down, just kind of being open with the communication, because it is a high pressure environment. So just being sure everyone's roles are kind of either assigned or at least they know what they're doing. That way there's efficiency in the process.
Sounds great. Yes. And I guess knowing as well that there's that chain of survival where we want to get early CPR, early defib, getting the person in hospital as soon as we can to give them the best chance at surviving an arrest or something along those lines.
Absolutely.
All right. So then in terms of feedback, what do I want feedback on?
I think for me, I was going to put using the defib machine. I don't think I've had as much experience as I wanted to on that. Yeah. So I'm still a little iffy on that. So I'll ask the tutor.
That's good. That's a good call. Yeah. I think for me, I'm keen to know if my CPR is the right depth, the right rate, the right spot. Right. I feel as though under stress, I'd be worried that I wasn't doing that properly, because it seems kind of like there's quite a technique to it. So I'm going to say CPR quality.
Okay.
And rate and rhythm for me. I also want to maybe get some feedback or kind of discuss a bit about how hand hygiene and stuff fit into it.
Right.
And I guess I want feedback if I'm bag valve masking on whether I've got the seal right.
Yeah, definitely.
Do you find that as well?
Yeah, I think my hand placement might not be proper. I get confused if I'm doing it properly. And then...
I still don't understand C and E grip or whatever.
Exactly.
So, yes.
Yeah. Good. Cool.
Bag valve mask positioning.
Okay, so you can get a sense there by crafting the form, then the subsequent behaviour that changes, by challenging students to, or asking them to think about the feedback they want beforehand. Now, the other piece in the puzzle that we included when we redesigned these assessment forms was getting the students at the end of the, after they performed them. So, for example, if those students were performing CPR, we asked them to get the tutors, or the tutors prompted them to say what made this a good performance. So we're challenging students each time to start to think about and evaluating their work. Excuse me. Sorry. Okay. I swear I'm not sick. Okay, so following those conversations, and the students would write down what they learnt. And I think one of the key things, sorry, I'm really losing my voice, is that through this, what we found was that for more than 450 medical students, they have 14 different sessions where now they're engaging in feedback conversations. So in that year, we're able to create more than 6,500 or 6,300 feedback conversations. So simply by thinking about how we can reshape a particular artifact and then the process around that, that's made a big difference in terms of feedback culture. So one thing for you to read so I can ease my voice is one of the students' feedback. Okay, so you can see there that really this is starting to get us to think from moving from that number of 2 point something, through to thinking about feedback in a more in-depth way, what constitutes quality feedback, then starting based on that understanding what quality feedback is, we can craft that into our teaching approach. And I think that quite alone, for me, it is so powerful in terms of what a difference that makes to student experience. So to summarize, and I realize I've probably gone over time, we can blame my coughing, is feedback is a process, not a judgment. So really thinking about with your SECaTs, it's not a judgment, it's an opportunity to start engaging in a feedback process. And really we can shift that one data point from not being a verdict to one piece of information. And you can work with that information to really start to think about creative and exciting ways in which you can optimize and enhance your teaching. For me and for us, it was about thinking about learner-centered feedback processes. But again, there's a whole host of opportunities within all of your different contexts. So really, I would say, yes, SECaTs are such a great catalyst, but really meaningful change comes from design and not us putting up our defenses. And I'm just going to end with a cute puppy photo because we got a new puppy at the weekend. So I thought you might want to see that. Maybe I can blame her for my coughing. Anyway, all right. I hope I haven't gone over too long, but I will stop sharing and be guided by Karen on what to do next.
Thank you so very much, Christy. Can you hear me? Yes. Okay. Sorry. Just got to check that the sound check for me every time. Fantastic. Look, I'm interested in. I have questions. And I have got some suggestions for people post this. But there is a question in chat from Hane. Given that SECaTs are at the end of a course, are you suggesting that we look at feedback throughout our courses and integrate it as part of the teaching process? Great question. Christy?
Thanks. It is. It's such a great question. And I think yes, you can be still gathering information about what are the learners' responses. Like I have done like stop, start, continues through our courses just to do little pulse checks along the way. So I think if you're talking about, there's two things I just want to clarify, and Honey, you might want to jump on. So are you saying that because the feedback, the SECaTs are at the end of the course, should you be looking for other pieces of feedback information as you go along? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yes. Yeah. Which I think makes sense. That would
Absolutely.
be good teaching, I imagine.
100%. Yeah, I would not be relying solely on the end of semester number. No.
Okay. Oops. And we've got another question there from Abby. Did you want to jump on, Abby, or are you happy for me to read it out?
Sure, I can jump on. I guess I'm interested in being in the humanities where I teach drama, so it's slightly different. But if we're asking the students to think about what they want feedback on in a critical research essay, for instance, rather than something that's more practical. I guess it's the same. It's just there's different learning outcomes or there's different criteria, so you're getting them. I think I answered my question as I was writing it down.
Yeah.
I don't know if other people have thoughts, you or other people.
It also can come to the assessment design. So whether you have like a formative report, for example, I've seen in a lot of the research, people might get students to submit a formative report where they get lots of feedback or written feedback, and then they submit another version where they indicate how they've addressed the feedback that's been provided previously, is one way. Another one is that we've done this in medicine where we're on the cover sheets now. If there's sequence tasks, the students write what they would like feedback on for this particular assignment, so then they can put it into practice on the subsequent one, or for the subsequent one, they write how they use the feedback they'd received previously.
That's really helpful. Thank
Yeah,
you.
no worries.
Rob,
Rob.
you've got your hand up.
Rob's one of the clinical tutors. Yeah, he'll be able to.
Yeah. Is that okay? Can
Yeah,
you
yeah. Hey,
hear me
Rob.
and see me?
Mhm,
Excellent.
mhm.
Thanks very much for all of that, and Alex too. Very helpful. I was just sort of wanted to add an extra bit of question to the SECAT as well. Have you run it alongside peer reviewing, which will be particularly helpful, especially mid-year, and going back to that previous question about how we can get a SECAT done, after semester one, and then the peer can sort of take that on board, and then we can see how the second semester pans out based on those two reflections. Again, this is not necessarily something for an answer right now, but it's whether it's possibly in the pipeline for, especially, for example, with first year medical students, they all come from different backgrounds, some straight from some from their undergrad, some from other postgraduate things, overseas, different sort of aspects of teaching as well. So it'd be good to sort of get a uniform mindset, both from the teacher's point of view and the student's point of view. So yeah, again, this is just my thinking out loud rather than asking specific questions. So thanks.
So Rob, are you talking about peer observation review of
Yeah.
teaching other
So
people observing your
teacher.
classes? Yeah.
So
Rather
yeah,
than
so yeah, rather than peer the students. So if the CCAT, when it comes back, does it correlate to what the peer review says, or can, based on what the CCAT findings are, and then the peer review sort of it can be sort of confidential. They might get a blind, might not know the CCAT findings of the lecturer that they're hearing. Does it have an effect, a positive effect, having a peer review on the subsequent CCATs thereafter, the effect of the teaching?
Well, I might just jump in there now, Christy, and we might have saved some moment for some questions for Christy later, because there's a lot of them there. But as luck would have it, Rob, that was part of our presentation, and in fact, we so I want to. I'll just share my screen here. Offer. Part of our presentation actually says that we're going to talk about alternative ways to evidence past the SECATs. So looking at SECATs in a different way, but also looking at other means of collecting evidence of your teaching expertise, I suppose. So, and the UQ basically supports this and has actually talked about it as a priority going forward. So if you're familiar with the roadmap from 2024 now, I guess, but you'll notice that under our priorities, it was to establish a systematic use of peer observation as a core support for educators to enhance teaching, but also about enabling educators to demonstrate their teaching excellence and to align our professional learning programs with the criteria of academic performance. Okay, so basically, there are opportunities to do peer observation within the university and around the place as an alternative to the CCATs. 2024. I guess what we would look at, and the question you said, you called it peer review, Rob, but we would like to kind of pitch it as more peer observation in a process that kind of is obviously belongs to the academic and that it's constructive, collegial, and in fact confidential, as you pointed out, so that when you as the teacher are reflecting on both maybe your CCATs, but also on the actual process of peer review, a peer observation, that you can build some evidence around, and you can build that narrative that Christy was talking about earlier. So you're building a narrative around what what it is you do in the classroom, and how that is kind of how you can evidence what that looks like from a student's perspective, but also from a peer's perspective as well.
Thank you.
And yeah, as a kind of like making that separate, we think about peer review as more of a summative judgment, whereas in this particular case, we think of our peer observation processes as a formative idea, and it's kind of around recognition of good practice alongside having a professional learning focus, which again is that kind of collegial part of that process. And it's also led by the academic as well. So we've got, I mean, within the university, we have processes in place where you might be able to sort yourself out, somebody to do a peer observation process, but we have a number of different ways that you can do it. And I guess when I was listening to Christy, what struck me was the intentionality of the process they went through with their students around like a redesign of how they were seeking feedback, and then that feed forward process as well. So I guess what we're kind of suggesting here, particularly if you're early career, that you might start thinking about that you collect your evidence in an intentional way. You have a plan around what you're going to do and there's no denying the SECaTs are used in ways that we sometimes don't necessarily appreciate so much, but we can also use them, as Christy pointed out, in a kind of a positive way, but be intentional about where you go for other sources of feedback. So, and I guess that's my first point there. I mean, there is no reason why you can't have mini polls in your classroom. There's no reason why you can't set up interviews with your students in a ad hoc fashion or deliberately. There's no reason why you can't set up student and staff partnerships with, there's a thing called this, well, currently within science, I believe, they have a student-led observation and course improvement, which is SLOKI for short, but you could organise your own student-staff partnership. You have other opportunities like group peer observations. We have Italy-supported peer observation training conversations. You might find a person down the road, down the corridor, and you set up a reciprocal opportunity for peer observation. And then you might want to formalise that role and build yourself a team of peer observers, and you can get help and training. So as an alternative method of kind of developing an understanding around your teaching, we recommend peer observation, but are there any other modes that you can think of that you would like to pursue? Am I not screen sharing?
Thank you for that. I think it's very clear. We'll just be I'll be just keen to hear back through MDLH and things like that. Yeah, to get a uniform sort of wave assessment, and certainly twice a year would be good.
Yeah. So I have a question. So if, for having listened to how Kirsty pitched this process, I guess, what does it mean for you if you're an early career teacher, or early career, or even middle career, or even late career? Maybe not late, or experienced. What kind of plans could you make, given that, and Alex has pointed out, the SECaTs have risen from 40% or doubled in size. And he said, from anecdotes, we've seen that engaging students through the semester in feedback process has increased response rates. Medi courses did get a massive response rate boost in 2025, and likely in part due to Christy's feedback design. Would you agree with that, Christy?
Well, I'd love to say it was all me, but no. I think it's such a multi-dimensional course, and I think sure it may have had a ripple, but I think this is in part the message that teaching is multi-dimensional, and there's so many pieces of information and feedback that we get that so for your point, Rob, getting peer review might give you one aspect, a bit more insights into one aspect of your teaching practice from another teacher. Equally, you could get more another perspective from students, what their experience of that is. You could also get quantitative data about what, how things have changed over time. You could also you know, use assessments as, are the results increasing over time? Therefore, are they achieving the learning outcomes that we had? So there's just so many different aspects to it that I think really trying to get information, more and more information, and synthesizing it is the best way that we can, the best is a great approach to get a better sense of it and not just be resting on one. So I think being curious would be my brief summary. Just be really curious about, even how students are responding on discussion boards. That can be an indicator that, oh, there's something that they're not getting here. I need to work with that information, or trying different strategies that then show, if you redo how you engage with students, if it's like a weekly bulletin or something instead of multiple emails, all of those strategies will start to help you, but you've got to be tuned to it, I think. I haven't said anything super profound there, but I think
No, that's very good. Thanks.
I think it comes to, it's not just one person, Karen. Like, I think it's multiple, and this is probably coming back to the story piece to it as well. It's a narrative. There were many things that occurred. This is one piece. Here's some information that students shared to support that, and here's some other strategies that we used when things were becoming challenging, or they weren't responding in the way that we'd hoped, or the learning outcomes weren't being achieved.
Yeah. So I know Aurora kind of well, I think that kind of, partly answers Aurora's question around what advice would you give to newbies teaching their first ever class and the process around that.
I think it's about not not trying to fix everything all at once. I think is one of the things that I would. Alex is smiling, but I think things take time to have traction. So if you're interested in feedback, then work with that aspect of it, or also talk to colleagues, riff on ideas with your colleagues around, see what they've done before, try those ideas out, as well as have lots, like if you've got lectures and so on, hang back and listen to the students and chat to them. Or I think, yeah, read the room is probably both the actual room and also the virtual room, I think, is the other piece. I'd love to hear what others think, because I'm not the only source too. If there's any,
I
all
look
your
across.
peers. Yeah.
There's some people. Yeah. Alex?
I might my first thought is harping back to what I said about your own values. So if you can really know what your own teaching style is and what kind of teacher you want to be, those are probably the feedback you want most quickly, you know. So if you want to be someone that really engages with students and build a rapport, see if you can get feedback on those questions first. To Christy's point of not doing everything at once. And then remind yourself that you are the expert in the room, in the class, and that you probably know you're teaching better than the students do. And so not always are the students correct in their feedback. It's valid, but you don't have to take it to heart each time.
I
I
think
think
the
it's also,
value.
oh, sorry. It's
I was
also
going to
coming
say.
back. No. But it's also coming back to what's our purpose. Our key purpose is to support student learning. So it's being really thinking about what are the different strategies you can use to facilitate learning and keep coming back to that. Some of those things students might not love, but I think it's reminding them and reminding yourself that it's what is the best ways to support learning. In the case of feedback, it's getting people engaged. They don't really love, I don't think Rob could probably attest to this, they don't really love the idea of what makes this good and all of that, but I think that will make them a better doctor if they're starting to be able to judge their own performance. So I think for me, it's what's the best thing to facilitate learning, and maybe hold that in your minds. Yeah.
Okay, on that very nice note, I think we might close off. It's 3:25. We promised to have you out of here by 3:30. We also would like to can you bear with us, because we're always interested in feedback as well. So we're just going to launch a little poll to see about your experience today. If you can have time, take 2 minutes to fill it out, that would be excellent. But other than that, this particular recording of this process will be available at a later date, and we are happy to support you in any of your kind of seeking of feedback or designing your own feedback process around your teaching expertise and your professional learning as well. So if you are new to UQ and are new to teaching at UQ, by all means reach out to Italy, the Institute for Teaching and Learning Innovation. But other than that, both Alex being as a member of SET, which is, remind me what that actually stands for, Alex.
Student Surveys and Evaluations team.
Yeah, okay, so please reach out to them because they are the team that does SECaTs, and so they are the best source of information as you go into that process at the end of the semester. Other than that, well, thank you very much for coming along. And thank you so much, Christy. That was amazing on many levels.
Pleasure. Sorry about the coughing.
No, that's okay. Feedback literacy. If you don't remember anything else, feedback literacy is an amazing thing. So take
Thanks,
that one
everyone.
away. Thanks, Christy.
See you. Bye.